Half-Life 1 released in a different era of gaming, where mod tools were the expectation. That would never happen nowadays. I mean, how are you supposed to make as much money as possible if they can just make their own games after buying only one of your games? They're not gonna spend $60, $70, $120 on your brand new game the following year. They could just play more mods. But because of this approach to gaming, it's kept some old games in the spotlight. One of them being Half-Life. There are many mods for Half-Life that I would consider better than a lot of AAA games that come out today, especially because that style of shooter largely doesn't exist in the AAA space anymore. So here are 7 different Half-Life mods that you can enjoy. I tried to have a good selection of these mods. I wanted some variety in the list. First mod to talk about is here because, well, it kind of has to be here. Everybody has probably played it at this point, and you all know about it, so I'm not going to stick here for very long, but that's Cry of Fear. Cry of Fear is a psychological horror game based on the Gold Source engine. Yeah, this is the Half-Life 1 mod. If you knew nothing about it, you would probably think it's a Source mod. Out of all the mods I'm talking about today, this one by far has the best production value. They could sell it for $20 and I would be totally fine with that. But again, there's not really much more I could say about this mod that you haven't already heard, so let's move to the next one. These next 3 mods all aim to do very similar things. They all want to exist within the Half-Life universe, kind of be a fan-made expansion in a way. The first one I'm going to talk about is Half-Life Delta Particles. I made a full video on this mod if you want to check that out. Now, while I said you could definitely take this as a fan-made expansion, there's no way you could convince me that this was a lost expansion to time. Delta Particles happens at the same time as the Resonance Cascade, but you're in a different facility with different characters, everything looks different, you have different weapons, so it's not like this is just taking place in Black Mesa. That's not a negative thing, it's just something I wanted to point out. There is a story and there is voice acting, but that's not really what I remember the most from this mod. What I remember is the gunplay. There's an entirely new weapon roster and the time to kill is faster. To compensate, the automatics are a little more accurate. This gives an interesting twist on Half-Life gunplay that you don't usually feel. It's still arcadey, but it has a pseudo-tactical feel to it. I actually really like how this mod feels, and some of these guns are just so satisfying. Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot. Now this next mod, you could easily convince me is just lost cut content from Valve. That's Half-Life Field Intensity. This one really does feel like an expansion to the original Half-Life, but the best way I would describe Field Intensity is that it's opposing Force 2. Not in the sense that you're playing as Adrian Shepard again, but in the sense that you were playing as one of those Marines that got sent in during the Resonance Cascade. But unlike Adrian Shepard, you didn't get knocked out for half the game, so you still had those orders to clean up all the civilians. It's really interesting to see how people react to this. You could just go full government cleanup and shoot everything, or you could just try to protect people. But what really makes this mod special to me is how it ties all of the original Half-Life games together, even Decay.
These ladies are crazy.
You will see so many things like this. Just random locations that you would recognize from some other expansion, random characters that you don't really get to interact with, but you see them and they're there. They even went out of their way to tie in things that really have no importance at all. Like this one cutscene from episode 2, that room is here, in this mod. And that is so cool. The best thing about it though is that it's not just pointless fan service. This serves a point. It gives you a timeline. It tells you when these events are happening, where people were in the facility. It gives you a good idea of where you are as a player, as your main character in this mod compared to everyone else. You're caught up in this just as they are. And it really does feel natural. It doesn't feel like them saying, hey, we played the expansions too, they're really cool, so our mod is also really cool, please love us. Honestly, Field Intensity is my favorite Half-Life 1 mod of all time, as of right now. That could change in the future, but it is really good, and I would highly encourage you to play it. The next mod effectively does the same thing, so I'm not going to spend as much time on it. That mod is Half-Life Echoes. Once again, you are another person in the Black Mesa facility during the Resonance Cascade. But the first thing I noticed is the sheer polish to this mod. These environments are so clean. All the set pieces don't feel like interactive cutscenes. It really feels like how Valve would approach this. The player has control, you were in that moment. When you do this right, you won't even notice that the dev was doing anything at all. But the thing that really impressed me above all else is that there was clearly a lot of playtesting put into this mod. I never found myself getting lost. It was clear where I needed to go and what I needed to do. I never found the mod to be overly difficult or just mind-numbingly easy to the point of getting bored. The pathfinding is great, the pacing is perfect, there was a lot of effort put into this mod. And that's extra impressive because some of the gameplay elements took what Valve kind of did and just dialed them up. The Half-Life games have always had some sort of sense of survival horror, but not really. I mean, not really fully diving into it anyway. This mod does dive into that, most notably with the section where you have no weapons and Mr. Friendly is around. If you don't know who Mr. Friendly is, he is a cut enemy that does exactly what his name makes him sound to do. Yeah, you can understand why this enemy was cut. But yeah, this never got frustrating at any point, the puzzles never got frustrating, the combat was always fun. Highly recommend this mod. This one and Field Intensity kind of want to do the same things, and they both nail it. And now we take a hard shift to an entirely different kind of mod. This is one you very likely already know of. That's Sven Coop. If you don't know what Sven Coop is, it's free on Steam, you can just download it and play, and, as the name implies, it is co-op. This effectively turns Half-Life into Serious Sam. It isn't just playing through the Half-Life campaign with your buddies. There is so much user-created content here, that's what you're going to be playing. And some of this just gets so silly and so absurd. This is on this list, even though everybody knows about it, because it's a really good time waster. I've been playing Sven Co-op for years and I still don't know what I'm gonna find when I join a random server. I saw Model's Big Daddy, I'm afraid. Sandcastle?
Penis.
Yep. Okay, well that's probably predictable. The next mod you also probably know of, Brutal Half-Life. Now, if Brutal Half-Life was just a tinkering of the main campaign, I don't think I would have put it on this list. Don't get me wrong, that is very fun. That does make the gunplay and combat more satisfying and more fun to me. But the reason Brutal Half-Life is here is because of all the extra levels added. Not only do you get new weapons and new combat, but now you get to play through the Doom levels in Gold Source with extra gibs, and this is just crazy when you're playing it. But there's also Quake levels, there's Soldier of Fortune levels, there's a hidden Indiana Jones level. There is so much content in Brutal Half-Life, I really can't recommend it enough. But I also don't need to go into detail about what it is, because when you think of a Brutal mod, you already should have a good idea of what it is. You probably just aren't aware of the amount of content that is here. And the last mod is one that's pretty old that many people probably have forgotten about entirely, Point of View. Now, I've never made a video of Point of View. I did a playthrough of it on this channel forever ago, before I took this channel more serious in a journalistic kind of way, so perhaps I should change that. I do really like this mod, because in this mod, you play as a Vortigaunt. That is so cool to me. But it's not just playing through the events of Half-Life 1 as a Vortigaunt. I mean, let's be real, that probably wouldn't be too interesting, you'd just get clubbed in the head with a crowbar. Instead, this has an entire story based around being a slave, because that's what Vortigaunts are in Half-Life 1. There's also cut content added back in, like the ability to use Stuka bats as weapons. This is a really novel idea and just a really cool mod. I'm always down for playing as something other than just a human when it comes to science fiction settings. We get enough of humanity in everyday life, it'd be nice to have something a little more interesting. Absolutely no bias in any way whatsoever. Hey, big thanks to my YouTube members for supporting this channel. They got to see this video a week ahead of time. If you want to join them, you can click down by the subscribe button. If you want to support this channel in other ways, that's totally cool. You can watch one of the videos on the screen or click that subscribe button. Thank everyone for watching. Hopefully I'll see you next week.